The Godswood had a silence that felt older than Winterfell stones. It was not the hush of an empty hall or a courtyard at rest, but something deeper, an absence of sound that made every breath feel like an intrusion. Jon Snow pulled his cloak tighter around his shoulders as he stepped beneath the red canopy of the heart tree. Snow clung to his hair and beard, melting in slow drops down his cheeks. The long night was over, the dead gone, yet the cold still bit as if winter refused to loosen its fingers from the north. He saw them at once. Bran Stark still as carved bone in his wheeled chair, eyes half-lidded and distant. Samwell Tarly shifting his weight from foot to foot, fog of breath rising in quick bursts. Between them, on a flat stone, scrolls and bound volumes lay spread open, their ink dark against parchment. "You wanted to see me," Jon said, voice low, as if the gods might be sleeping nearby. Bran's gaze sharpened, sliding from the pale, bleeding face of the tree to Jon's. "We did," he answered. His tone was mild, almost bored, but Jon had learned that this was when Bran was most dangerous, when his mind wandered half in the past, half in places beyond naming. "There are things you have to know." Sam swallowed. Hello, Jon," he stammered, then grimaced, as if annoyed with himself. "I mean, you're Jon. Just Jon." "Just Jon is fine," Jon said. His eyes moved to the pages. "What's all this? I thought we were done with secrets. The dead are gone. Whatever this is, it could wait until morning." "It cannot," Bran said softly. "The past cannot wait. It has already happened. But whether you know it or not changes the future." Jon frowned. "You're not making any more sense than usual." Sam's fingers tightened on the nearest parchment. It was cracked at the edges, the ink faded. "Do you remember," he asked, "what I told you about what I read in the Citadel? About Prince Rhaegar Targaryen?" Jon shifted, uneasy without knowing why. "You said he annulled his marriage, married someone else in secret." It sounded like one more story of a man chasing his heart instead of his duty. "Yes," Sam said. "Only it wasn't just a story. It was recorded properly by a septon who witnessed it. The first marriage set aside, the second blessed. It was all there. I thought it might not matter anymore. We were all going to die after all. But we did not," Bran said. "And so it matters very much." The gods would seem to lean closer. Jon felt the weight of its branches, of the carved eyes in the white bark, as if the tree, too, wanted him to listen. "Why bring this to me?" Jon asked slowly. "Rhaegar Targaryen's marriage is a dead man's folly. It doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," Sam replied. His breath came fast now, puffing out in little clouds. "Because the woman he married, she wasn't just anyone." His gaze flicked to Bran, as if seeking permission. Bran nodded once. "Her name was Lyanna Stark." Jon's throat went tight. His aunt's face rose in his mind, blurred by the stories he'd heard, by the statue in the crypt. Wild, laughing eyes, a wreath of winter roses, a girl who hated what was expected of her. Lyanna, who Ned Stark never spoke of except in fragments, whose absence had been a shadow at his father's shoulder his entire life. "That's not possible," Jon said. The words tasted wrong. "Lyanna Stark was promised to Robert Baratheon. Everyone knows that. Promises are broken," Bran said, eyes far away again. "Vows can be changed. She loved Rhaegar. He loved her. Robert's rebellion was not only about a stolen woman. It was about pride and lies and the fear of dragons." He lifted a hand, fingers pale and thin against the dark fur of his cloak. "I have seen it, Jon. I have watched it happen. I have seen your father at the Tower of Joy. Not your father, Eddard. You know him as you always have, but he is not the only father whose blood runs in your veins." Jon's feet felt rooted to the snow. "Bran," he said quietly, "if this is your idea of a jest, it's not a good one." "I do not jest," Bran replied. "You know that." Sam's voice broke in, frightened and earnest. "Jon, just listen, please. I wouldn't be saying this if I wasn't sure. between what I read and what Bran has seen. What you've seen, Jon cut in. You sit there with your ravens, your visions, and now you want to tear my life apart with them? Bran blinked slowly, almost like an owl. Your life was torn apart the moment you were born, he said. All we are doing is showing you the pieces. Jon looked from Bran to Sam and back again, heart thudding in his chest. Snowflakes clung to Bran's hair, melting unnoticed. Sam's cheeks were raw with cold and worry. The heart tree loomed over them all, its carved mouth bleeding sap as if it, too, had something to confess. What pieces? Jon asked at last. The words felt scraped from his lungs. Say it plain, then. If you've dragged me out here in the middle of the night, if you've gone to the Citadel and dug through old pages and watched whatever ghosts you watch, say it plain. Bran's gaze did not waver. I will, he said, but you must be ready to hear it. Bran's eyes went distant, the blue of them clouding over like winter sky. Jon had seen that look before. The moment before Bran slipped away, leaving his crippled body behind to fly through someone else's memories. Now, sitting beneath the heart tree, Bran Stark's gaze turned inward and backward. His pupils seemed to vanish, swallowed whole by some unseen tide. When he spoke, his voice had that odd flattened quality it took on when he was half elsewhere. The Tower of Joy, Bran said, and Jon felt the name like a cold hand on his neck. A lonely tower in Dorne. 8 men ride there wearing the dire wolf and the stag. 1 man in white armor waits for them with his brothers. You know his name, Ser Arthur Dayne, the Sword of the Morning. Jon dragged in a breath. He saw it in his mind, though he'd never been there. The pale dawn light, the wind sighing over stone, swords drawn beneath a ruined tower. He had heard the story in pieces, pieced together from old whispers in the guardrooms and the half-spoken tales of men who had survived Robert's rebellion. My father spoke of it once, Jon said. He said it was the place where he lost too much. Bran nodded, though his eyes were looking through Jon at something far behind him. He lost many things there, brothers, friends, the last of his boyhood. His fingers curled around the arms of his chair. But he found something, too. Jon's jaw clenched. Bran, I see him climb the tower stairs. Bran went on, inexorable as snowfall. His sword is bloody. He is wounded. He thinks he has come to rescue our sister from a prince's lust. But when he reaches her, she is already lying in a bed soaked red. She is pale. Her hair is black with sweat. She is holding something. The air in Jon's lungs turned to ice. He felt, absurdly, that if he reached out he could touch this vision Bran was spinning, feel the stones beneath Eddard Stark's boots, smell the copper tang of blood. What is she holding? He asked, though he knew. Some part of him had always known, ever since he first saw Lyanna's statue in the crypt and felt, without reason, that he owed her something he could not name. A child, Bran said. A boy, her son. Sam shifted, breath rasping. Lyanna Stark died in childbirth, he whispered, more to himself than anyone. It would make sense. If there was a child, and if she wasn't married to Robert. She was married, Bran said. His unfocused stare flicked to Sam. Not to Robert, to Rhaegal. The Septon spoke the vows. The marriage was lawful. The child born of it is no bastard. Jon swallowed. His throat hurt. He remembered all the times he had been reminded of that word, the way it had been thrown at him like a stone. Bastard. Snow. The look in Catelyn Stark's eyes every time she saw him, as if he were a stain someone had scrubbed at and never quite erased. What was his name? Jon asked. His voice came out hoarse. This boy, Lyanna's son. Bran's eyes cleared a little, as if he were looking at Jon and the memory both at once. She whispers it to Eddard as she dies, he said quietly. She is afraid Robert will kill the child, because he is Rhaegar's son. She begs her brother to protect him. Promise me, Ned, she says. Promise me. And she gives him the boy. The words struck Jon like hammer blows. Promise me, Ned. He heard them as if they had been spoken in his own ear. He had heard them all his life without ever knowing it, in the soft sadness in Eddard Stark's gaze when he looked at him, in the way his father's jaw tightened whenever Robert Baratheon spoke of dead Targaryen children with no regret. Sam took a shaky breath. "Jon," he said, "between what Bran has seen and what I read, it all fits. The dates, the locations, Prince Rhaegar's annulment, his remarriage, Lyanna's death, your birth." "My birth," Jon repeated. The words felt foreign in his mouth, like a language he had never learned. "What does my birth have to do with any of this? I was born at Winterfell. I've always—" "No," Bran said. "You were born in Dorne, in the Tower of Joy. Your mother was Lyanna Stark. Your father was Rhaegar Targaryen. You are not Jon Snow. You are Aegon of House Targaryen, the sixth of your name." For a heartbeat, Jon heard nothing but the rush of his own blood. The world narrowed to the space between Bran's words and the pounding in his ears. The wind seemed to die. The heart tree loomed, red eyes weeping. "No," Jon said, came out almost as a growl. "You're wrong. My father, Eddard Stark, raised you," Bran said. "He loved you. He broke his honor for you. But he is not your father. He never was." Sam flinched at the look on Jon's face but pressed on. "It's all there in the records," he said, the habit of scholarship making him cling to the only solid ground he had. "The High Septon's journal, the witness marks, the names. Bran's seen it. I've read it. Jon, Aegon, it's you." Jon shook his head, the movement sharp, almost violent. "I bent the knee to Daenerys Targaryen," he said. He seized on the fact like a lifeline. "She is the queen. She is the last Targaryen. That's what she—" "What everyone. She is not the last," Bran said. "And she is not the rightful heir." The words fell into the silence like a sword dropped on stone. Jon's knees almost went out from under him. He took a step back instead, boots crunching on the thin crust of snow. The Godswood spun, a blur of red leaves and white trunks and breath-clouded air. "Aegon Targaryen," he said, more to the empty air than to them. That's a dead prince, Rhaegar's son. The one the mountain." Bran shook his head. "The boy you're thinking of died in King's Landing," he said. "He was Rhaegar's son by Elia Martell. He was named Aegon as well. Rhaegar believed there must be a prince who was promised, a song of ice and fire. He thought it might be his first son. He was wrong. It was you." The idea landed like a blow to Jon's ribs. He saw it as Bran must have seen it. Lyanna, pale and drenched in blood, clutching a squalling infant as her brother knelt beside her. "Robert will kill him," she whispered, voice breaking. "He'll kill him if he finds out. Promise me, Ned. Promise me." He saw Eddard Stark's face, torn between duty and love, between the king he had chosen and the sister he could not bear to lose. He saw the moment when Ned bowed his head and agreed to carry a secret that would brand him an oathbreaker to the man he loved as a brother. "Promise me, Ned." He remembered, suddenly and with searing clarity, a night in Winterfell when he'd been small and frightened of the dark. Snow had piled up against the windows. The wind had howled like wolves. He had crept from his little bed to the corridor, imagining shadows as monsters. He had found Eddard Stark in the dim light of the corridor, cloak thrown over his nightshirt. His father had picked him up without a word and carried him back to bed, holding him until the storm quieted. The memory struck him now with almost physical force. That man, that father, had carried the secret every day of Jon's life and never spoken a word. "Why didn't he tell me?" Jon demanded. His voice was rough, breaking at the edges. "If this is true, if my mother was Lyanna Stark and my father was—" The word father stuck in his throat when applied to any man but Ned. "Why keep it from me?" "Because Robert Baratheon would have killed you," Sam said. "We know what happened to Elaya's children, to Rhaegar's first son. If Robert had learned there was a Targaryen heir hidden in the north, he would have come for you, no matter what it cost. He chose your life over his honor. Bran said. He let those who loved him think he was faithless. He let his wife think he'd betrayed her, all to keep you breathing. Jon's chest hurt. He felt flayed, as if each word were peeling away some layer of skin he'd never known he had. And now? He asked. He forced himself to look at Bran, to stare into those eyes that had seen him as a child and as an infant, as a name scribbled in ink and as a man standing in the snow. Why now? Ned Stark is dead. Robert is dead. The war with the dead is done. Why drag all this out of the grave? Sam exchanged a quick glance with Bran, then squared his shoulders. Because there's another war, he said. And because the truth matters in that one too. Jon did not need to ask which war he meant. The living had turned on the dead, and together they had carved out victory from nightmare. But the living had not settled their own claims, their own crowns. Daenerys, Jon said softly. Her name rose in his mind in a tangle of images. Silver hair and firelight, eyes like polished amethyst, a hand on his shoulder as they flew above snowbound valleys. She thinks she's the last of her house. She isn't, Sam said. And more than that, she isn't the rightful heir. The laws of succession are clear. A trueborn son comes before a sister, especially one whose parents were properly wed. You have the better claim, Jon. The idea of it made bile rise in his throat. A crown, a throne. The weight of that chair in King's Landing, carved of 1,000 swords. He had never wanted it. He had spent his life walking away from power, not toward it. I don't want a claim, Jon snapped. I don't want a throne. I bent the knee because I needed her army, and because... He broke off. Because I believed in her. Because I saw something in her, some mirror of my own stubborn need to do what was right, no matter the cost. Because it was the only way to save the living. Bran's gaze did not soften. You may not want it, he said, but the truth doesn't care what you want. It simply is. Jon scrubbed a hand over his face, feeling the grit of frozen sweat beneath his fingers. And what am I meant to do with this truth? He asked. March into her chambers and tell her her birthright isn't hers? Tell the northern lords that the man they chose as their king is not their bastard brother, but some southern prince who has more right to the Iron Throne than the woman they already distrust. You asked us to look for answers, Bran reminded him. When you first came back from Dragonstone, you told me you needed to know if there was any way to unite fire and ice, to find the balance. This is part of that. That was before, Jon said, voice raw. Before the dead. Before she... He could not bring himself to list the things Daenerys Targaryen had done in the name of the living. The men she had burned, the cities she had taken, the mercy she had shown, the ruthlessness she had wielded. He had seen her bent over the wounded after the long night, seen the grief in her eyes for Jorah Mormont and the others who had fallen. He had also seen the way her hands tightened when someone mentioned Cersei Lannister's name, the way her jaw clenched when northern lords whispered doubts behind her back. Bran studied him. The choice will come, he said quietly, whether you want it or not. When it does, what you are matters. Who you are matters. Jon laughed once, bitter and short. Who am I then? He asked. Tell me that, three-eyed raven, if you've flown so far and seen so much. Am I a Stark? A Targaryen? A bastard? A prince? What do you want me to be? Bran's A's dropped to the snow, then back up again. For once, there was a flicker of something human there, something like pity. You are my brother, he said. You are Lyanna Stark's son. You are Rhaegar Targaryen's heir. You are the blood of the dragon and the blood of the wolf. You are Aegon Targaryen, Jon Snow, both. No one can choose which part of you matters most. Not even you. The words hung between them, turning the Godswood into a place Jon hardly recognized. This had always been where he came for quiet, to stand under the weirwood's watchful eyes, to breathe the cold, clean air, to listen to the creak of branches and the distant murmur of the castle. Now it felt like a courtroom, or a crypt where someone had pried open old tombs and let their secrets crawl out into the light. I should never have asked, Jon said under his breath. You had to, Sam said gently. You had to know. Did I? Jon rounded on him, anger finally breaking through the shock. What good does it do anyone? There's a dragon queen in my courtyard who's bled for the north, who lost her people to our fight. She believes this is her destiny, that she was born to break wheels and whatever else she says. Telling her this, he shook his head. It'll tear her apart. It'll tear us all apart. Sam flinched but did not look away. Telling her might, he admitted, but not telling her. Someone will find out. Varys is already sniffing for cracks. Tyrion too, in his own way. If they discover this without you, they'll use it. You might wake up one day and find half the realm whispering your name in place of hers. Jon thought of Varys's pale, expressionless face, of Tyrion's thoughtful, troubled gaze. They were already watching Daenerys, already weighing her choices like coins in a scale. If they had this piece to set against her, they'll make me into something I'm not, he said. Into some banner for people who want a different queen. Maybe, Sam said, or maybe they'll see you as what you are. Someone who doesn't want the throne, which is exactly why you might deserve it more than anyone. Jon let out a harsh breath. I don't want it, he said again, because it mattered, because he needed anyone to understand. I never have. Bran watched him with that distant, measuring gaze that made men shift and squirm. Wanting is not the same as needing, he said. The realm may need you, whether you wish it or not. Jon looked away, back to the heart tree. The red leaves rustled in a wind he could barely feel. Its carved eyes spilled sap that gleamed like blood in the moonlight. For a moment he imagined that if he pressed his forehead against the cold white bark and asked, the old gods might answer. They had watched him play at swords with Robb Stark beneath these branches, had heard him whisper his secrets when he was a boy and too proud to speak them to anyone else. Now he had a secret so large it felt as if it might split him in two, and there was no one who could carry it for him. Ned Stark was dead. Lyanna was long in her grave. Rhaegar was a name from songs. Daenerys was a woman of fire and fury whose heart he could not quite read. What do you expect me to do? He asked quietly. The anger had drained, leaving only a raw weariness. Walk to the great hall now, bang my cup on the table, and announce to all of Winterfell that they've been bowing to a bastard when they should have been bowing to a prince? Tell Daenerys that the throne she's chased across half the world isn't hers at all. We don't expect anything, Sam said. We just wanted you to know. So when the time comes, you're not making choices in the dark. And when will that time be? Jon muttered. Bran didn't answer directly. The wheel is still turning, he said. Queens and lords and dragons and wolves. The dead are gone, but people remain. And people are more complicated than whites. Jon gave a humorless huff of laughter. That's one way to put it. Secrets have a way of coming out, Sam added. If I could find this in the Citadel, someone else could too. Maesters talk. Ravens carry more than letters. Better it comes from you than from a rumor. Jon ran his tongue over his teeth, tasting iron. He thought of Daenerys' face when he had told her that the dead were real, of the way she had looked at him when she decided to fly north with her dragons anyway. He thought of her hand gripping his as they plunged into darkness together, of the way her lips had parted when he had bowed to her at Dragonstone. The idea of standing before her now and telling her she was no longer the rightful heir felt like stepping willingly into Dragonfire. Give me time, he said at last. I need to think. Of course, Sam said. I didn't mean that you should, tonight or soon, Bran said. Jon's head snapped around. Bran's expression was as mild as ever. You won't have as much time as you think. Before Jon could demand what that meant, something shifted at the edge of the Godswood. A soft crunch of snow, the faintest whisper of movement. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. He was a man who had lived half his life with danger at his shoulder. He knew when someone was watching. He turned his head. Through the branches, he saw a flicker of copper hair vanishing into shadow. A swirl of thick northern wool, the suggestion of a height he knew without question. Sansa Stark. Sansa had not meant to spy, She had left the great hall with a headache blooming behind her eyes, the voices of lords and ladies buzzing like flies. They were never satisfied, these men who had sworn to the Starks since before she was born. Even with the Night King defeated, with the dead burned and gone and the snow outside stained with their ashes, they found new grievances to gnaw. They did not like Daenerys Targaryen's stern gaze or her foreign titles. They did not like the Unsullied standing rigid by the walls or the Dothraki who lingered like a storm waiting to break. They did not like dragons overhead, even when those wings had shielded their men from an ocean of whites. They loved Jon, though would follow him into a blizzard without complaint. But even that love had begun to fray at the edges now that he had bent the knee. She had gone in search of air, of snow that didn't smell of sweat and smoke and worry. Her feet had taken her along familiar paths, past the old training yard, still scarred from the fire and ice of the long night, through the open doorway that led toward the Godswood, place for quiet, for thought. Then she had heard his voice, not the one he used in the hall, low and measured and trying its best to be kingly. The other one, the softer, rougher one he'd had as a boy, before anyone thought to hand him a crown. It had been laced with something she rarely heard from him now: shock. She had paused under the arch, letting the cold seep into her bones, and listened. At first she could not catch the words, only the tone. Jon's voice, Samwell's blurted attempts at reassurance, Bran's eerie calm. Then names drifted to her through the branches. Rhaegar, Lyanna, Aegon Targaryen. Sansa pressed herself against the stone, stone cold and unmoving beneath her palm. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. She had grown up on tales of Rhaegar Targaryen, the beautiful prince who loved music more than war, who had crowned Lyanna Stark the queen of love and beauty at Harrenhal, who had stolen her away and set off a rebellion that burned half the realm. In King's Landing, those stories had been twisted by new tongues, painted with the colors of lions instead of wolves. Sometimes Rhaegar was a monster, sometimes a tragic dreamer. Lyanna changed too, victim, seductress, foolish girl. But through all of it, one thing had remained certain. Lyanna had died, and whatever child she might have carried had died with her. That was the story. To hear otherwise now, Aegon Targaryen. Sansa risked leaning closer, breath held. The Godswood's branches obscured her view, but she could make out Jon's black-clad form, the tilt of his head, the stiff set of his shoulders. "Better claim," Samwell was saying, his words tumbling over one another. "By all the laws, Jon, trueborn, the son of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Aegon." "Stop saying that name," Jon snapped. "It isn't mine." Sansa's mouth went dry. She had known, in a vague way, that Jon's parentage was stranger than most. Ned Stark had brought him home from war and never spoken of his mother. Catelyn had treated the boy like a living wound. The servants whispered. The North accepted him because Ned Stark asked them to, because Jon never claimed more than he was given. She had thought, more than once, that there must be something more to it than a lord's lapse on a long campaign. But she had been a child then, and later a prisoner, and questions had been a luxury she could not afford. Now the answer was here, in the voices of a crippled brother and a nervous night's watchman who turned himself into a maester. Prince Aegon Targaryen, her father's sister's son, her cousin, her king in some southern eyes. She drew back slowly as the conversation dwindled. The names and fragments of phrase chased each other in her mind. Trueborn, better claim, last Targaryen, not the rightful heir. Snow drifted onto her lashes. She blinked it away, feeling fresher and colder than the flakes on her skin. Jon was not just the man the North had chosen. He was, if Bran and Samwell were right, the kind of man the South was meant to choose as well. The kind Cersei Lannister had spent her life murdering, the kind Robert Baratheon had smashed to pieces with his warhammer. And Daenerys Targaryen, who had sailed halfway around the world to claim the throne she believed was hers by divine right. She had no idea. Sansa's thoughts moved quickly, quicker than her heart. The North would not like this, she knew. They did not want any more dragons. They had accepted Daenerys only grudgingly, because Jon had asked them to and because the dead had been marching. If they learned that the man they called king in the north was in truth a Targaryen prince, some of them might turn away. Others might cling tighter, wanting their king to wear a crown in King's Landing so they could claim some scrap of the old glory that had never really been theirs. She knew lords' hearts. They could dress their desires in duty and honor, but in the end, they wanted what everyone wanted: safety, comfort, pride. If word of this bloodline spread, the realm would shake. Old alliances would crack. New ones would be forged in secret. Swords would be sharpened not against the dead this time, but against their neighbors. And Daenerys? Sansa thought of the Dragon Queen's face at the feast, the stiffness in her jaw when the northern men praised Jon for falling from the sky like some hero out of an old song. She had seen that look before, in Cersei's eyes when someone else drew too much attention, in Joffrey's when a night took longer than he liked to die. Daenerys Targaryen was not Joffrey. Sansa was almost certain of that. But she was a Targaryen, brought up on tales of her father's stolen throne and her brother's broken crown. She was a woman who believed the world had wronged her, and who had taught herself to answer wrongs with fire. If she learned that Jon had a to claim, Sansa's fingers tightened on the stone. She stepped back from the arch as she heard footsteps approaching, the murmurs of the men leaving the Godswood. Swiftly, she turned away, letting the shadows swallow her. She did not want Jon to see her there. Not yet. Not with his face raw and his thoughts bleeding. There would be time for that later. For now, she walked into the storm-laden courtyard with her head high, the snow swirling around her like a cloak. Worry gnawed at her, sharp and insistent, but under it something else sparked to life. A cold, clear understanding that the game had changed again. All her life, Sansa Stark had watched men play with crowns as if they were toys, breaking lives and kingdoms along the way. She had learned to survive their games. Now, for the first time, she understood that her family had been holding a peace no one else knew about. She would not let anyone use it to destroy them. Later, when the courtyard had emptied and the torches burned low, Sansa went to the Godswood herself. She told no one. She needed no escort. Winterfell knew her steps. The snow muffled the sound of her boots, leaving only a soft hush as she walked beneath branches thick with frost. Her breath steamed in front of her. Her cheeks stung. The sight of the heart tree unsettled her in a way it never had before. As a girl, she had come here only dutifully, hand in her father's, repeating the prayers she had been taught without much thought. In King's Landing, the seven had been forced on her, bright and gaudy and hollow as their September. She had prayed to them too, because there was no one else to listen. Now she found herself drawn back to the old gods, not out of faith, but out of habit. They were the only ones who had stayed. The red eyes stared down at her as she stepped into the clearing. The snow had smoothed over the marks of the wheels and boots that had disturbed it earlier, but Sansa could almost see them anyway, the ghosts of her brother and her cousin and Samwell arrayed beneath the branches. She reached out and laid her fingers on the cold, white bark. Felt like ice turned to bone. Sap gleamed dark in the carved grooves of the mouth. "My father kept this from us," she said softly. The Godswood swallowed her voice. "He let Mother hate him for it. He let me grow up thinking he'd sinned, thinking there was some woman somewhere who had taken what was ours. All to protect a Targaryen." Saying it aloud made it more real. Jon, with his solemn eyes and stubborn jaw, with his endless insistence on doing what was right even when it cost him everything. Jon was Lyanna's son, Ned's nephew, Rhaegar's heir. As she closed her eyes, she could see it. Lyanna's wildness in his refusal to yield, Rhaegar's brooding quiet in his gaze. A song of ice and fire indeed. "What am I meant to do with that?" she asked the tree. It did not answer. Of course it didn't. The old gods were not like the seven, with their stories and statues and priests eager to interpret their will. The old gods were the rustle of leaves and the creak of branches in a high wind. They were the silence of snow on stone. They were memory, Bran would say, and Sansa supposed he would know. Memory, she thought. That's what this is. A memory that has come due. She let her hand fall and stepped back. Whatever else was true, one thing remained. Jon was her blood. He had knelt to Daenerys and ridden her dragon into battle and come back with his life hanging by a thread. He had given his death once already for the people under his command. He had never asked to be a king, a lord, or a prince. That, more than any bloodline, mattered to her. Daenerys had saved them, and Sansa would not forget that. But Daenerys wanted more than gratitude. She wanted loyalty, unquestioning and complete. She wanted the North bent into the shape she had dreamed of across the sea. The North had bent enough, Sansa thought. Once to the dragons when they were first conquered. Once to Robert's rebellion and its aftermath. Once more now to defeat the dead. Every time they bent, someone she loved paid the price. She could not let them be broken. "We will not suffer another mad king," she whispered to the weirwood. "Or a mad queen, not if I can stop it." The tree said nothing, but the wind shifted, carrying a faint howl from beyond the walls. The wolves were out there somewhere, in the darkness beyond the fires. Her father had always claimed they were bound to the Starks by more than just heraldry. Sansa drew her cloak tighter and turned away. There was work to do, a secret to hold, a future to guard. As she stepped out of the Godswood arch, she saw Jon walking down the corridor that led to his chambers, shoulders hunched. Ghost padded at his side, white fur stark against the stone. He looked smaller than she remembered from the hall, the great hero who had faced the Night King. He looked like the boy who had stood at the back of the room while their father held court, trying to be invisible. For a heartbeat, she almost called his name, almost ran to him, took his chilled hand, and told him she knew that they would face this together, as they had faced so many things since the world had turned on them. But she held back. Not yet. Not until she knew exactly how to protect him from what his blood might cost him. She let him pass, watching from the shadows, and only when he had gone did she return to the tangled maze of Winterfell's halls. Jon's chamber felt too small. It had never bothered him before. He had slept in worse places. A straw pallet in a drafty shack beyond the wall, a pallet on a ship's deck, a pile of cloaks on frozen ground. Winterfell's stone walls had always been a comfort, the weight of history grounding him, the crackle of the hearth chasing away the worst of the cold. Now the stones felt close, the air thick. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, and stared at the candle flame on the table as if he could find answers there. The light wavered with each breath, clinging to the wick with stubborn insistence. Ghost lay at his feet, white fur spilling across the rushes. The direwolf's eyes glowed faintly in the dimness. He watched Jon without blinking, ears pricked, as if waiting for command or confession. Jon reached down and sank his fingers into the thick fur between Ghost's ears. The familiar texture steadied him, the wolf's warmth grounding him in a way words could not. "Aegon Targaryen," he said softly. Ghost huffed, a soft, questioning sound. "It doesn't fit," Jon went on, fingers tightening. "It's a name from songs, from stories old Nan used to scare us with. The dragon princes, the mad king's son, not me." He thought of the books he'd devoured as a boy, the ones Maester Luwin had let him borrow when the others had gone to sleep. Tales of the kings of old, of Valyrian steel and dragonflame. He'd pictured himself in those stories sometimes, but only as a nameless spear carrier or a cloaked guard in the background. Never as the prince whose choices changed the world. Ned Stark's bastard did not do that. Jon Snow did not do that. Jon Snow died, Melisandre had told him once. But you are not dead anymore. Now it seemed that Jon Snow had been dying slowly all his life, chipped away by secrets he had never been allowed to see. He let one hand fall, rubbing at the scar through the leather of his jerkin where the knives had gone in. He remembered the shock of cold as the blades slid into flesh, the taste of blood in his mouth, the way the world had gone gray around the edges. He remembered opening his eyes on the table, gasping, feeling as if he'd been dragged back from somewhere he could not name. If he was honest with himself, he had never felt entirely at home in his skin since, as if some part of him had stayed behind in the dark. Now Bran wanted to add a new layer on top of that. A name, a lineage, a throne. "What would you have me do?" he asked Ghost. The wolf only thumped his tail once, the sound soft in the silence. It was an absurd question. Ghost wanted food, warmth, pack. He did not care who Jon's parents were as long as Jon still smelled like himself. Jon envied him. Another name floated up in his mind, Daenerys Targaryen. He saw her as she'd stood on the battlements after the battle, snow in her hair, face streaked with soot and grief. He saw her as she'd been on the ship, eyes wide when their lips had met, something desperate in the way she'd held him as if she weren't sure he'd still be there in the morning. He had told her once that he did not care about crowns, only about the living. He had meant it. He still did. If he told her this, if he walked into her rooms and said, "You are not the rightful queen. Your father stole your throne by madness, and his son lost it. It was never truly yours. It was mine." What would that do to her? To them? He imagined it too easily. The flash of disbelief, the flare of anger, the brittle smile that followed. He imagined her saying his name, not Jon but Aegon, tasting it like a new weapon on her tongue. He also imagined something worse, a kind of bright, burning joy. A dragon's joy, seeing another of her kind, seeing not a rival but a partner. Two heads of the dragon, the old saying went. Some said there must be three. Without meaning to, he pictured himself by her side on the Iron Throne, her hand in his, their banners entwined. It was a pretty picture, like something from one of Sansa's beloved songs. It made his skin crawl. "I'm no king," he told the empty room. "I tried that here and it nearly broke me. How am I meant to rule a whole realm?" Ghost lifted his head and nudged Jon's knee with his nose. Jon huffed a faint, unwilling laugh. "You don't care," he said. "You just want me to remember who I am to you." To the free folk, he was the man who had opened the gate and let them through, the one who had stood between them and the Night's Watch's anger. To the Watch, he was a traitor and a leader and a corpse. To the north, he was the king who had left them to kneel to a dragon queen and then brought that queen back to their doorstep. To the Starks, he had always been something in between, not quite brother, not quite stranger, loved and kept at arm's length all at once. Now he was all of those things and something else besides. He could not keep it inside him forever. Secrets rotted when they were buried. He had seen what happened when truths were hidden too long. They exploded, staining everything around them with blood. He needed someone who would see him, not the name Bran had given him. The answer rose without effort. Arya. He found her where he had expected to, on the walls, looking outward instead of inward. Arya Stark stood with her hands resting on the icy stone, eyes fixed on the dark line of trees beyond the outermost fires. The hood of her cloak was thrown back, snow peppering her hair. Needle hung at her hip, as natural on her as a ribbon had been when she was a child. She did not turn when he approached, but he knew she'd heard him. Arya heard everything. "You should be sleeping," he said by way of greeting. "So should you," she replied. He came to stand beside her. From here, Winterfell looked almost untouched by all it had endured. The towers rising solid into the star-pricked sky, smoke curling from chimneys, the faint glow of torches marking the paths of men on watch. If you did not look too closely, you could pretend the dead had never come, that the snow in the courtyard had only ever been stained by mud and spilled ale. Ghost padded to the parapet and sat, eyes sweeping the darkness as if searching for threats Jon could not see. "Can't sleep," Jon admitted. Arya snorted. Obviously. He studied her profile. The sharp line of her jaw, the small scar near her eyebrow, the way her mouth twisted when she was amused. She was a stranger and his little sister in the same breath. Death clung to her like a cloak, but so did life. "How long have you known?" he asked. Came out more abrupt than he'd intended. Arya finally turned to look at him. Her eyes narrowed. "About what?" "Me," Jon said. "What Bran and Sam told me." His throat tightened, but he forced the words out. "About who I am." One dark eyebrow arched. "You mean about who your parents are," she said. "You're still you." He stared at her. "You knew," he said slowly. Not the details, she said. Not the names. But I knew they were hiding something. Bran looks at you like you're a particularly interesting page in his book. Sam gets that guilty look he used to have when he sneaked bread out of the kitchen. You went to the Godswood with your jaw set like you were walking to an execution. It wasn't hard to put together. She turned back to the trees, shoulders lifting in a small shrug. Sansa knows too, I think. Or enough. I slid down Jon's spine. She was listening, he muttered. She listens to everything. There was no censure in Arya's voice, only fact. Don't worry. If she wanted to shout it from the battlements, she would have done so already. She's thinking, that's worse. It was, in a way. Sansa's thoughts could move quietly, rearranging the pieces on the board without anyone noticing until it was too late. I'm not who I thought I was, Jon said, as much to himself as to her. My whole life, I wanted to know who my mother was. I imagined a fisherman's daughter, a tavern wench, some girl father had loved and lost. I made up stories for myself. None of them ever looked like this. A princess and a prince? Arya's tone was flat. A sister and a brother, Jon corrected. Father's sister, Rhaegar Targaryen. The man people say started a war for love, or for dishonor. Depends on who you ask. That part doesn't matter, Arya said. It matters to the realm, Jon said. To Daenerys, to the lords in the south. They'd rather kiss a dragon's hand than bow to a wolf's. If it looks like the old days again. If my claim is... He exhaled sharply. I don't even like the word. Claim, Arya supplied. He nodded. Doesn't matter, she said again. Not to me. You're my brother. Always have been. I don't care what your name was in some tower in Dorne. It was Aegon, he said. Saying it aloud still felt strange. Aegon Targaryen. That's what they say. That's what she named me. Arya made a face. Sounds like a prince out of those stupid songs Sansa used to prattle on about. Sansa still does, Jon said, a faint smile tugging at his mouth despite everything. Exactly. Arya's lips twitched. If she starts calling you your grace, I'll have to stab something. Let it not be me, he said. She glanced sideways, eyes glinting. Depends how annoying you become. The exchange eased something tight in his chest. He drew a longer breath, watching it plume white in front of him. I don't want it, he said after a moment. The throne, the crown, any of it. I meant what I said when I bent the knee. Daenerys risked everything for us. She brought her dragons into our war. She watched people she loved die for a place she'd never seen before. How can I turn around now and say, oh, by the way, I'm the one who should wear the crown? You can't, Arya agreed. Not if that's not who you are. And if the realm needs it? He asked bitterly, echoing Bran without meaning to. If men like Varys and Tyrion decide that a quiet, reluctant Targaryen is better than a dragon queen who's lost too much? Arya's jaw tightened. Then we deal with that when it comes, she said. But listen to me, Jon. She straightened, turning to face him fully, the wind tossing her hair into her eyes. Don't let them decide who you are. Not Bran, not Sam, not Daenerys, not Sansa, not anyone. You know yourself. That's more than most people can say. He searched her face. She had seen more of the world than he had, in her own way. The red wastes of war, the narrow alleys of foreign cities, the insides of men's eyes as they died by her hand. She had killed a king's assassin, a sadistic lord, the Night King himself. Yet she stood here now, snow on her lashes, telling him with simple certainty that he was still himself. You're a Stark, she said. And something else too, maybe, but you're a Stark. Don't forget that. I'm not a Stark, he said reflexively. Not by name. Name doesn't matter. Arya's gaze hardened. Blood does. The things you've done do. The choices you make. We choose the people we are. You chose to take the black. You chose to let the free folk through. You chose to ride a dragon north when others would have stayed safe. That's why. Ooh, not some dead prince's name. He wanted to believe her. The words settled over him like a cloak that almost fit. "I have to tell her," he said quietly. "Daenerys. She deserves the truth, whatever it does to her." "Then tell her," Arya said. "But don't kneel to her because you're afraid of what happens if you don't. Kneel because you choose to, or don't because you choose not to. That's all." Jon looked back out at the forest. The aurora's faint light shifted, green and pale across the sky like the ghost of the northern lights that had danced above them during the long night. "Bran says I won't have much time," he murmured. "That the choice will come sooner than I think." Arya snorted softly. "Bran sees too much, but he's usually right." They stood in silence for a while, shoulders touching lightly. Ghost pressed against Jon's leg, a solid presence. For the first time since Bran had spoken in the Godswood, Jon felt something like steadiness. The world had tilted, but some things had stayed where they were meant to be. Arya at his side, Ghost at his feet, Winterfell behind him. Whatever name Bran had given him, whatever fate Sam's parchments hinted at, he would meet it as he always had, one step at a time, sword in hand, eyes open. Tyrion Lannister drank less now than he once had. He still kept a cup in hand more often than not. The weight of it was familiar, and the taste of wine on his tongue sharpened his thoughts as much as it dulled his fears. But he had learned, somewhere between the Battle of Blackwater and the long march north, that he needed his wits more than he needed oblivion. He stood on the balcony above the courtyard and watched the currents of men move below. Northern bannermen in thick furs, shoulders hunched against the cold. Unsullied in perfect formation, spears aligned. A handful of Dothraki lingered near the gates, dark shapes against the snow. The tension between them was almost visible, threads of mistrust pulled taut. Above it all, the shadow of Rhaegal swept briefly across the roofs. The dragon's roar rolled over the castle like distant thunder. Men paused mid-step, glancing upward, then hurried on. You could become accustomed to almost anything, Tyrion mused, even dragons overhead. He took a slow sip of wine. It warmed his throat, not his fingers. The door behind him creaked. Soft footsteps approached, boots light on stone. Tyrion did not turn immediately. He already knew who it was. "You're restless," he said. Jon Snow came to stand beside him, gaze dropping to the courtyard. "You're observant," he replied. "It's my only real talent, and it's kept me alive thus far." Tyrion glanced up at him. The man looked tired. There were new lines around his mouth, new shadows beneath his eyes. "Restless nights are a common affliction in Winterfell, I'm told. Something about all the ghosts in the walls." Jon's mouth twitched. "You don't believe in ghosts?" "Oh, I believe in many things I never thought I would." Tyrion gestured with his cup toward the sky. "Dragons, undead armies, fire priests, chaste knights. Why not ghosts? They'd be among the more reasonable company I've encountered." Jon didn't answer that, which was answer enough. Tyrion let the silence sit a moment, then set his cup down on the ledge with care. "You went to the Godswood," he said, "after the feast, with Bran and our learned friend Samwell. I imagine that was not a casual stroll to admire the weirwood." Jon's shoulders tightened. "You've been watching me." "I watch everyone," Tyrion said mildly. "It's my other talent. The Godswood is where Starks go to think, and Bran doesn't go anywhere without reason. Samwell is as subtle as an avalanche. 3 men go into the trees together and come out looking as if the world has shifted under their feet. One would have to be very drunk indeed not to notice." Jon exhaled through his nose. Tyrion recognized that sound. It meant the younger man was weighing how much to say. "I won't press," Tyrion added. "Not yet. But I'd be a poor hand if I didn't admit that whatever you discussed concerns me. It concerns all of us, I suspect." "Not everything does," Jon muttered. "Everything does," Tyrion countered softly. "When the game is this large and the pieces this dangerous. A dragon queen, a reclaimed north, a crippled boy who sees through time, and you, Lord Snow, who is no longer just Snow. You're not as opaque as you'd like to be." Jon's head snapped around. His eyes, dark and wounded, met Tyrion's. "What do you mean by that?" "I mean," Tyrion said, choosing his words with care, "that secrets have a way of changing the way a man carries himself, as if he's wearing armor no one else can see. Or chains. Sometimes both. You have the look of someone who's discovered he's heavier than he thought." Jon's jaw clenched. For a moment Tyrion thought he would walk away. Instead, he turned back to the courtyard, hands braced on the stone. "Do you trust her?" he asked. He didn't need to specify who. There was only one her between them. Tyrion considered the question. The easy answer would be yes. Daenerys Targaryen was his queen. He had pledged her his counsel and his loyalty, such as they were worth. She had, in her own way, saved the world. He thought of her face lit by dragon fire. The exultation and grief mingled there. He thought of the way she had watched Jon in the hall, eyes shadowed, lips pressed thin when the northern men raised their cups in his name. "I trust her intentions," he said finally. "She truly believes she was born to make the world better, to break it and rebuild it. I trust that she will not rest until she has done so." "That's not an answer," Jon said. "No," Tyrion agreed. "It isn't, but it's the best one I have." Jon stared down at his hands. "What if the way she wants to rebuild it? What if it costs more than we can pay?" "Ah." Tyrion picked up his cup again, more for something to do with his fingers than for the wine itself. "Then we find a way to lessen the cost. Or we decide it is too high and look for a different builder." Jon tensed. "You're talking about treason. I'm talking about survival." Tyrion took another sip. The two often look much the same from the outside. He let his gaze stray toward the Godswood again, though he knew he'd see nothing but branches. "Whatever you are hiding, Lord Snow, I suspect it touches on that question. On who should wield power and how." Jon didn't deny it. That, more than anything, confirmed Tyrion's suspicions. "I won't press," Tyrion repeated. "Not now, but know this, Varys is already restless. He can smell a secret in a room the way a dog smells meat. If he doesn't have it yet, he will soon. The choice of when and how this truth emerges may not be entirely yours." "Nothing is ever entirely mine," Jon said under his breath. Tyrion almost laughed. "Welcome to power," he said. "It's rather less enjoyable than the songs suggest." They met in the hall when most others had gone to their beds. It had been Sansa's idea. She had sent a boy with a whispered message to Arya, another to Bran's attendant. Jon had walked in to find them already there. Sansa at the center of the high table, Arya lounging in the chair to her right with her boots on the rung, Bran in his wheeled chair to her left. The three of them together, the last of Eddard Stark's children, waiting. For a moment, he was a boy again, walking into a room where he did not quite belong. Then Sansa looked up and their eyes met, and he saw in hers not the contempt of his youth but something steadier, something like resolve. "Sit," she said. He did. The chair creaked under his weight. The hall felt enormous and empty without the press of men and the clatter of cups. Candlelight pooled on the tables, gleaming on wood scarred by generations of knives and elbows. Bran's gaze flicked between them. Arya spun a dagger idly between her fingers, the blade catching the light with every turn. "You know," Jon said, "it wasn't a question." Sansa inclined her head. "Enough," she said. "Not everything, but enough to know that the world beyond these walls will be a different place if it ever learns what we know." "The world beyond these walls is always a different place," Arya said lightly. "Changes every time someone breathes too loudly in King's Landing." "This is more than breathing," Sansa said. She looked back at Jon. "Bran and Sam told you in the Godswood. I was there. I heard enough before I realized I should leave." "You should have told me you were listening," Jon said. Her chin lifted a fraction. "If I had, would you have told me? Or would you have pretended nothing had changed?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. He did not know the answer. "I would have told you," he said eventually. "I would have needed time, but I would have told you. You're my sister. Your cousin." Bran corrected, his tone mild as ever. Our sister, Arya said, the words a lazy drawl edged with steel. Blood's blood. Sansa's mouth softened for a heartbeat. Call it what you like, she said. We are what's left of House Stark, whatever else we are besides. Jon folded his hands on the table. They felt too big, too clumsy for this. Bran and Sam told me who my parents were, he said. There was no point in dancing around it. Who they believed they were. Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen, Sansa said. I heard enough for that. They're certain, Jon said. Bran has seen things. Sam has read the records. Fitz, father, Eddard, lied to protect me. The word father still wanted to attach to Ned Stark more than to anyone else. Jon let it. Whatever blood said, love had its own claims. And, Sansa asked, and what? What else did they say? Her eyes held his with that unblinking, assessing calm she had either learned from Cersei or in defiance of her. They would not have called you to the Godswood in the middle of the night just to tell you a story about a dead prince and a dead girl. There was more. Bran watched him. Arya watched him. The hall seemed to lean forward. Jon swallowed. They said I'm not Jon Snow, he forced out. Not only that I was named Aegon Targaryen, that my parents were wed, that I'm their trueborn son, their heir. The words fell into the quiet like stones into a deep well. Sansa's fingers tightened on the edge of the table. Arya's dagger stilled. And that gives you a claim, Sansa said. Jon nodded once. To the Iron Throne, she added. He nodded again, weary. Arya whistled softly. Our Jon, king twice over. King in the north and king in the south. Someone's been greedy with crowns. I don't want either, Jon said. He heard the pleading note in his own voice and despised it. Not the way you think. I bent the knee to Daenerys because I needed her army, because it was the right thing. I would do it again. And now, Sansa asked, now that you know she is not what she thinks she is, that she is not the rightful heir. She's still a Targaryen, Jon said. She still suffered. She still fought and bled for us. I won't take what's left of her birthright away with a piece of parchment and a vision. It's not about what you take, Sansa said. It's about what happens when others realize there is something to be taken. Bran's voice slid into the space between them. Men will begin to whisper, he said. Some already are. They see the way the North looks at you and at her. They see the dragons. They see the dead gone and the living restless. It will not take much for them to start asking questions. When they do, they will come looking for answers. If they find those answers in the wrong hands, they'll use me, Jon finished for him. They will try, Sansa said. The Lords of the Reach, the Vale, the Stormlands. They'll see a chance to back someone they think will be easier to shape than a dragon queen who has spent her life fighting to get here. Tyrion, Arya added. Varys. Jon's stomach clenched. Tyrion's loyal to Daenerys, he said. Loyalty has limits, Sansa said quietly. I've seen what happens when men decide their queen is no longer what they thought she was. Varys is the worst of them. He'll burn any banner if he thinks another will cast a better shadow over the realm. Jon looked from one face to another. His family, his pack. Each of them had been remade by the wars they'd survived, hammered into new shapes by loss and blood and exile. Yet here they sat, at the same table where they had once crowded as children, reaching for bread and arguing over who would get the last slice of pie. I don't want this to tear us apart, he said. His voice cracked on the last word. We've only just come back together. Sansa's expression softened. For a moment, he saw not the Lady of Winterfell, but the girl with auburn hair and bright eyes who had dreamed of songs and nights. It won't, she said. Not if we remember who we're Starks, whatever else we are besides, and we look after our own. Arya nodded, dagger spinning again. We protect the pack, she said. Bran simply watched, as if he had always known they would come to this. Then help me, Jon said. Help me carry this. Help me keep it from turning into something that destroys us. Sansa held his gaze. "We will," she said. "But you have to be honest with us, Jon. No more secrets. If you mean to tell Daenerys, we need to know. If you mean to keep this hidden, we need to know that too. We can't guard against what we can't see." He thought of Daenerys' face, of Tyrion's watchful eyes, of Varys' quiet steps in the corridors. "I'll tell her," he said finally. The decision settled over him like snow, cold but clean. She deserves that much, whatever it costs. Sansa's lips pressed together. "Then we'll stand with you when you do," she said. "And after, whatever happens." Arya grinned, quick and fierce. "If she tries to burn you, I'll stick her with the pointy end." "Arya," Sansa said sharply. "What? You were thinking it." Jon managed a ragged laugh. Felt like the first real one in days. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," he said. "I've had enough of burning for one lifetime." They sat together a while longer, the four of them, as the candles burned low and the hall grew colder. Outside, the wind moaned around the towers. Above, unseen in the dark, dragons slept with their heads tucked under their wings. Change was coming. Jon could feel it like a storm on the horizon, electric and inevitable. But for now, in this moment, he had something he had never truly had before. The truth of who he was, and the knowledge that he would not face it alone. The stone passage to Daenerys Targaryen's chambers felt longer than it had any right to be. Jon's boots rang softly on the flagstones, echoing off the narrow walls. Torches guttered in their iron brackets, throwing restless shadows ahead of him. Outside, the wind keened around the towers, trying in vain to push its way in. It sounded, Jon thought irreverently, like Ghost when someone barred him from a room he thought he ought to guard. Two Unsullied stood on either side of Daenerys' door, spears upright, faces smooth and unreadable. They watched him approach with the still intensity of men who had been shaped into weapons rather than soldiers. Jon inclined his head in a wordless request. One of them rapped the butt of his spear against the oak once, then opened the door. Heat rolled over Jon as he stepped inside. The chamber smelled of smoke and leather and some faint, sweet oil that reminded him of foreign coasts he had never seen. For a moment his eyes had to adjust, going from torchlight to firelight. Then he saw her. Daenerys stood near the hearth, hands held out to the flames as if trying to catch their warmth in her palms. Without the layers of armor and embroidered leather, without the heavy braids coiled at the back of her head, she looked smaller, younger. The pale fur at her shoulders made her hair seem almost white. She did not turn immediately. "You're out late," she said. Her voice was steady, but there was an edge to it, a faint tension that hadn't been there before the battle. "Again. I could say the same of you," Jon replied. He closed the door behind him. The latch fell with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. The Unsullied would remain outside, impassive, deaf to whatever passed between queen and ally in the room beyond. Daenerys looked back over her shoulder. The fire painted one side of her face gold, the other in shadow. He saw the faint lines of weariness at the corner of her eyes, the thinness of her cheeks. She had eaten little since the battle. Grief had sat with her at every meal, an unseen guest no one could banish. "Sleep doesn't come easily," she said. "Not after." Her gaze drifted toward the narrow window, where night pressed close. Not after seeing death so near. Jon understood that too well. "I know." He came a few steps closer, but not close enough to touch. The fire popped, sending a cascade of sparks up the chimney. "How are you?" he asked. It seemed a foolish question, but it was the only one that came. She laughed softly, without much mirth. "I'm counting my dead," she said, "and the living who might yet die for me. I'm listening to your lords grumble about feeding my army. I'm thinking of the woman who sits on my throne and waits for me to come to her." Her gaze sharpened on his face. "And you?" He swallowed. "Thinking," he said. "Dangerous habit," she said lightly, but her eyes never left his. "Most kings and queens avoid it if they can." "I'm no king," Jon said, more sharply than he intended. Her brows twitched together, just for a heartbeat. He saw the way the words struck her and almost winced. Once, if he'd been asked what he was, he might have said bastard, or brother, or Lord Commander, depending on whose eyes he stood before. Now each of those terms felt like a coat he had outgrown. "Then what are you?" Daenerys asked. There it was. The question that had been choking him since Bran had spoken beneath the bleeding tree. He felt it rise up again now, thick and bitter in his throat. "Daenerys," he said, "I need to tell you something." Her posture changed. It was a small shift. Shoulders straightening, chin lifting, but he felt the room tighten around it. The queen returned to her bones, sliding over the tired woman like armor. "That sounds ominous," she said. "Is it about Sansa Stark? Or your sister who killed the Night King?" A flicker of something like envy crossed her face at the last words. "Or is it about my dragons? I saw the way you looked at Rhaegal today." "It's not about Sansa," he said. "Or Arya. Or Rhaegal." He drew a breath that felt like he was inhaling ice. "It's about me." The fire popped again. A log shifted, collapsing into embers. She took a step toward him, pale brows drawn together. Up close, he could see the smudge of soot near her temple she hadn't bothered to wash away, the faint tremble in her fingers that she masked by folding them together. "What about you?" she asked. "I found out who my parents were," he said. The words hung between them. She blinked once, slowly. "We know who your father was," she said carefully. "Ned Stark." He shook his head. Saying it aloud would make it real, would cut the last rope tying him to the man who had raised him. But he had made his choice in the hall with his siblings. He would not turn back now. "Eddard Stark raised me," Jon said quietly. "He loved me, but he wasn't my father." Daenerys's eyes sharpened. The heat of the fire seemed suddenly insufficient. He saw calculation stirring behind her irises, old wounds reacting to the word father like salt. "Then who was?" she asked. Jon's mouth was dry. "Rhaegar Targaryen," he said. Silence crashed down like a wave. For a heartbeat, Daenerys did not move. Her face was a mask, all the emotion wiped clean, as if someone had dragged a hand across wet paint. Her pupils widened, swallowing the purple, then narrowed to hard points. "That isn't funny," she said. Her voice had gone very soft. "I'm not laughing," Jon replied. He watched the ripple move through her. Shock first, then anger, then something more fragile threading its way between them. Hope. It flickered across her like light over water, there and gone. "Who told you this?" she demanded. "Who put this in your head?" "Bran," Jon said. "Samwell. They showed me. Sam found it in the Citadel, records of Rhaegar's marriage being annulled, of his new marriage. To Lyanna Stark," she whispered. The name slid from her tongue with care, as if it might cut her. "Your aunt, Ned Stark's sister, the woman Robert Baratheon claimed was stolen from him. The woman he started a war for." The history hung between them like smoke. "Bran saw it," Jon said. "He can see things, Daenerys. He's more than just my brother now. He watched my mother die. He saw her give me to Ned and beg him to keep me safe from Robert. Sam found the proof in the Maester's books. The dates, the witnesses, the High Septon's own hand. It fits." She took another step forward. Now there was almost no distance between them. He could feel the heat coming off her skin, as fierce in its way as the fire at her back. "And you believed them," she said. It was not a question, but he answered anyway. "Yes. Your brother who sees visions in trees," she said. Her mouth twisted on the word brother, as if she were tasting it anew. "And your friend who reads stolen pages in some dusty tower. They tell you that you are the son of Rhaegar Targaryen, that your whole life is a lie, and you simply accept it." It sounded foolish when she put it that way. Jon clenched his jaw. "It's not just what they said," he replied. "It's everything. The way Ned Stark never spoke of my mother. The way he looked at me when Robert talked of killing Targaryen children. The timing, the secrecy, It explains why he bore her dishonor on his shoulders all those years, letting everyone believe he'd broken his vows. He met her gaze. He didn't. Not like that. He kept a promise instead. Daenerys drew in a sharp breath. For a moment, pain flickered across her features, too naked to be hidden. Promises, brothers, a father who had threatened to burn an entire city rather than yield. "And what name do they say your mother gave you?" she asked, voice thin. "Aegon," Jon said. The name felt heavy, ill-fitting. Aegon Targaryen. Her eyes closed briefly. He watched her throat work around a swallow. "My brother already had a son named Aegon," she said. "By Elia Martell, a little prince. She broke off. The memory of the babe's skull ruined under Gregor Clegane's mailed fists needed no retelling. "He named you the same. He never did anything by halves." "I'm not him," Jon said quickly. "I'm not a prince in silk. I'm not. You are my blood," she cut in. The words landed between them with a strange, disorienting force. She reached up as if to touch his face, then stopped herself, fingers hovering in the air. "You are my brother's son," she whispered. "My nephew." The words sounded foreign in her mouth. They had been many things to each other already in her own mind. Allies, tools, lovers, perhaps something tenderer that she had never quite allowed herself to name. Now the world tilted, and the lines between them redrew. "Nephew, and it doesn't change what we've done," Jon said, feeling suddenly clumsy in his own skin. "Or what we are. We didn't know." "It changes everything," she said sharply. Her hand dropped. "Not just between us. Do you have any idea what you've just told me?" He did. Of course he did. It had been beating at the inside of his skull from the moment Bran had spoken. "It means I have a claim," he said. He forced the word out. "By the laws of the Seven Kingdoms. A better claim than yours." Rage flared in her eyes. Not the wild, searing anger he had seen when she'd watched her enemies die, but something tighter, more wounded. She stepped back as if he'd struck her. "You said you did not want it," she said. "You bent the knee to me. You told me you believed in me, trusted me. Was that a lie?" "No," Jon said. "It wasn't. But you see yourself on that throne now," she pressed. "You see yourself with my crown, our armies, my dragons." "No," he said again, louder. "Daenerys, listen to me." He fought to keep his voice level. "I never wanted a crown. Not in the north. Not in the south. I bent the knee because it was the only way to bring our people together against the dead. That hasn't changed. This," he gestured vaguely at his own chest, at the idea of his blood. "This changes nothing about what I want. It changes everything about what everyone else will want," she said. "Do you think they will care what you want?" Daenerys whispered. "When they hear that you are Aegon Targaryen? That you are a man and trueborn, and the son of my brother they sang so many songs about." Her voice sharpened on each word, picking at old wounds he had not caused but could never heal. "In the north," she went on, "they already love you. They cheer your name. They drink and laugh and slap you on the back and talk about how you fell from the sky like some hero from their bloody stories. They stare at me like a stranger, like a threat. Give them this and they'll have a new song, the dragon they can call their own." "It's not like that," Jon said. "They're cautious because they've been burned before, by kings from the south, by men who took their loyalty and gave them ashes. They'll come around." "To me?" she asked. "Or to you?" He faltered. The honest answer would hurt whichever way he turned it. "I won't tell them," he said quickly, grasping at the one thing he could offer. "If it's your fear that they'll use this against you, I won't speak of it, not to them, not to anyone else. I don't want this to divide us." Something flickered behind her eyes, relief and suspicion at war. "Not to anyone?" she pressed. "Not even to your family?" His chest tightened. He thought of Sansa's steady gaze, Arya's fierce certainty, Bran's distant eyes, of the promise he'd made at the high table, fingers crossed invisibly under the wood, that there would be no more secrets between them. He took too long to answer. You already have, Daenerys said. It wasn't a question. Her voice flattened. Who? He hesitated. Lying would only widen the crack already opening under their feet. He had always been a poor liar anyway. Sansa, he said. Arya, they heard. Or enough to guess. Daenerys laughed softly. There was no humor in it. Of course, she murmured. Of course it would be Sansa Stark. Don't, Jon said sharply. Don't make this about her. This is about me. About what I am. No, Daenerys said. This is about what you could be. To them. To everyone. You say you don't want a crown, Jon, but I have known many men who claimed not to want power until it was laid at their feet. They always found reasons to pick it up. I am not those men, he said. Maybe not. She paced a few steps, the fur hem of her gown whispering across the rushes. But your sister, the word bent in her mouth. She will see what this means. She is not blind. She does not trust me. She never has. Now you've given her a sword to hold over my head. She wants to protect the North, Jon said. That's all. And what do you want? Daenerys demanded. She turned back to him, eyes bright. Do you want the North, Jon? Do you want it as an independent kingdom again? Do you want to be their king in truth, with a dragon at your back and your name on their lips? I want my people safe, he said. I want never to see another army of dead things at our door. I want a world where children can grow up without wondering whether winter will bring corpses to their beds. That's all I've ever wanted. And you still think that world needs a queen? She asked. Me? Yes, he said. He meant it, despite everything. Despite the fury in her eyes. You've fought for it. You've bled for it. You could have turned your ships away when I told you of the Night King. You didn't. You came north. You lost Jorah Mormont. You lost part of your army, your people. That matters. Your kind words are a poor shield against blades, she said. Or whispers. He took a step closer. Their breath mingled warm in the space between them. I won't betray you, he said. Not for a crown. Not for anything. That's the truth, whatever blood is in my veins. She searched his face, looking for cracks. Whatever she saw there seemed to steady her, if only a little. Her shoulders eased down. Some of the edge left her mouth. Then swear it, she said softly. Swear that you will never claim this birthright Bran has set before you. Swear that you will never let them raise you up against me. I already have, he said. In my own way, I bent the knee. I meant it. That was before you knew, she replied. Before you could look at me and think, that should be mine. I don't think that, he protested. Maybe not today, she said. Maybe not tomorrow. But you are not the only one who looks. Her gaze slid away briefly, toward the door, as if she could see through stone to the men who paced the corridors beyond. Tyrion, Varys, the lords who will gather when we go south. They will count banners. They will count dragons. And they will count bloodlines. This isn't what I want, he said again helplessly. But it is what is, she replied. The space between them felt fragile, like ice gone thin over deep water. Daenerys' gaze slid back to his, fierce and intent. I crossed the world for that throne, she said quietly. I walked through deserts. I freed slaves. I watched brothers die. I was sold like a broodmare and came back with fire in my veins. I lost a child to witchcraft. I lost another over the wall. I have only ever had one thing that was truly mine. One thing that felt like it made all of that mean something. Her fingers flexed, as if closing around the invisible shape of a chair made of swords. And now, she went on, you stand in front of me and tell me that by the laws of men who burned my family alive, that thing was never mine at all. Do you understand what you're asking me to accept? Jon's throat burned. I'm not asking you to accept anything, he said. I'm telling you what's true. What we do with it, what you do with it, is up to us. Is it? She asked. Truly? She stepped back, putting a sliver of cool air between them. Or will the North decide for you? Will Tyrion? Will my loyal lords in the south, when they hear Rhaegar's son lives and wears a wolf's cloak? He could not promise they would not. Even if he stayed silent, others might not. Secrets had a way of leaking like water through cracked stone. You can't fight shadows, he said. If they're going to whisper, better they whisper about something true. She gave him a look that might once have melted cities. That is the most northern thing you've ever said, she muttered. Honest as a blade to the gut. He wanted to reach for her then, to bridge the distance with touch if not certainty. He wanted to say her name not as a queen or a claim, but as the woman who had stood with him in the snow and flown with him over ice. Daenerys, he said again, softer. Look at me. I don't want your throne. I don't want your crown. I want you to sit on it and build something better than what came before. I meant that when I knelt. This doesn't change it. Her eyes searched his. For a moment, the queen peeled back and he saw the girl beneath. The exile who had lived her childhood in borrowed rooms, who had listened at doors while her brother ranted about the throne that should have been his. The girl who had once walked into a fire with 3 dragon eggs and come out with more than anyone had thought possible. If I believe you, she said slowly, if I let myself believe that you truly do not want it, will that be enough? Will your loyalty be enough to quiet their whispers? To stop men like Varys from casting their nets in your name? He thought of the eunuch's calm eyes. I don't know, he admitted. Her jaw tightened. Then you must make them know, she said. You must make it impossible. You must stand before them, when the time comes, and say with your own mouth that you will never accept that crown, that you will never let them set you above me. I can do that, Jon said. I mean it. Good. Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. Then we will say nothing of this beyond these walls. Not to your lords, not to your men. You've already told your siblings. The word snagged. Let it stop there. He hesitated. The snow-muffled silence of the hall with Sansa, Arya, and Bran came back to him. Their faces had been grave and determined, but there had also been something else. Relief. Relief that the lie Ned Stark had carried alone was finally being shared. They deserve to know, he said. My family, they paid the price for this secret as much as anyone. Father's honor, mother's life, my own half-place in this house. I can't take it back, but I can at least give them the truth of why. They have it, Daenerys said. That is enough. More than most in this world ever get. It's not just about them, he said. If I'm to stand with you in the south, if I'm to ask my people to fight again under your banner, I can't do it while holding a lie in my hand. They need to know who I am. They know who you are, she snapped. They know your deeds, your sacrifices, the things that matter. It matters, he said stubbornly. Maybe not to you, but to them, to me. She stared at him, breathing hard. The fire painted her features sharp and bright, all angles and hollows. You are asking me to share my birthright with you, she said at last. Even if you do not claim it, to let the world know there is another who could sit where I mean to sit. That is what you are asking, Jon. I'm asking you to trust me, he said, and to trust that truth won't break what we've built. She laughed softly, bitterly. Truth breaks more than lies ever do, she said. You should know that by now. He had no answer to that. He left her with the crackle of the fire filling the silence between them. No words of farewell, no softening, no touch, just a nod he wasn't sure either of them believed in, and the sound of the door closing behind his back like the lid of a chest. The lamps in the corridor felt dimmer than before. The Unsullied stepped aside, spears scraping stone with a faint hiss. Jon walked past them with his head down, mind spinning faster than his feet could carry him. He had thought, foolishly, that telling Daenerys the truth would be like lancing a wound. A sharp pain, then relief. Instead it felt as if he had driven the knife in deeper. Her eyes stayed with him as he turned corners and descended stairs. Not the way they had looked at him above the snowy battlefield, full of fierce, desperate gratitude, nor the way they had softened on the ship when her hand had come to rest tentatively on his chest. This had been something harder, brighter. a dragon watching a new fire flare on the horizon and trying to decide whether it was friend or rival. He did not doubt that she had suffered, that she had earned her banners and her titles in blood and ash and sweat. But he also could not pretend he hadn't seen the cracks. The flash of fury when northern men toasted him too loudly, the way she had stared at the empty seat where Jorah Mormont should have been, the tightness in her mouth when Sansa had spoken of the North's independence. He had handed her another crack tonight, whether he meant to or not. The castle had thinned for the night. The great fires in the hall had burned low. A few servants moved like ghosts between kitchens and storerooms. Jon passed them without really seeing their faces. His steps took him where they always did when he needed to think, to the quieter halls of the inner keep, toward the rooms where his family slept. He found Sansa and Arya where he half expected to. In a small antechamber off the main passage, cloaks over nightclothes, a single candle burning on the table between them. Arya had her feet up on the bench, carving something small and sharp from a scrap of wood. Sansa sat straighter, hands folded, eyes flicking to the door every few breaths. When Jon stepped inside, they both looked up. "Well?" Arya asked. Sansa said nothing, but her gaze raked his face, reading the lines there as if they were words on parchment. Jon shut the door and leaned back against it for a moment, suddenly weary. "She knows," he said. "That much we guessed," Sansa said. "You look like someone who just threw a torch into a room full of oil." "It wasn't..." He scrubbed a hand over his face. "I couldn't lie to her." "We didn't ask you to," Arya said. "What did she say?" He crossed the room and sank onto the bench opposite them. Ghost, who had been shadowing him silently, curled up at his feet with a soft huff, eyes on the sisters. "She believes it," Jon said, "or part of her does. The other part wishes it were a lie she could burn out of me." Sansa's mouth tightened. "Of course," she murmured. "It threatens everything she's built her life on. She thinks they'll use me against her." Jon went on. "The lords in the south, our own men, Tyrion, Varys, everyone. She wants the truth contained. No one else can know." He did not add. She would rather the truth had died with Ned Stark and Lyanna, buried under snow and ruin. "Too late for that," Arya said. Sansa's gaze did not leave his. "And what do you want?" she asked quietly. "Truly, Jon, not what she wants, not what you think you should say. What do you want to do with this truth?" He thought of Daenerys's plea. "Swear you will never claim it, never let them set you above me," and of the stubborn knot in his own chest that would not let him lie. He thought of the North, brittle and proud. Of Bran's calm voice saying the realm might need him whether he wanted it or not. "I want it not to matter," he said. "I want us to go south, end Cersei, and come back without this tearing us apart. I want her to rule well and for our people to live." He met Sansa's eyes. "I want to stand with her, not opposite her. That hasn't changed." Sansa studied him. "But the world won't let it be that simple," she said. "It never does." He gave a listless shrug. "I told her I'd make it clear I don't want the throne," he said. "I'll say it in front of whoever needs to hear it. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not. I won't spend the rest of my life answering to a name that isn't mine." "She thinks I gave you a sword," Sansa said softly, "to hold over her." Jon's head snapped up. "It's not like that," he protested. "I told her you want to protect the North. That's all." A shadow of a smile crossed Sansa's face, cold and brief. "That's not all, and you know it. But I'm glad you defended me." "I won't choose between you," Jon said fiercely. "Not her and you. Not the North and the rest of the realm. We'll find another way." Arya snorted. "You're good at that," she said. "Trying to stand in the middle and keep everyone from killing each other." "It hasn't worked very well so far," he muttered. Sansa leaned forward, elbows on the table, candlelight touching the copper of her hair. "Then let's make it work this time," she said. "We can't change what you are, but we can decide who knows, who uses it, who doesn't." He felt the ground shifting under that suggestion. "Sansa, I won't shout it from the battlements," she said. I won't tell every lord with a grudge and a hungry son, but there are people who need to know. People who will try to shape this whether we like it or not. Tyrion, Varys. They're Daenerys's people, Jon said. She trusts them. Does she? Sansa asked. Truly? You said yourself she fears they'll use you against her. That fear will fester. It will grow claws. If we don't give them something to hold on to now, they'll find it themselves later, and then we'll have no say at all in what shape it takes. Arya's eyes flicked between teeth. You want to tell Tyrion, she said. To what end? To make him see what's at stake, Sansa answered. He's not a fool. He knows what happens when a ruler begins to see threats everywhere. He's seen it before. Her mouth thinned. So have I. Jon thought of Joffrey's gleeful cruelty, of Cersei's cold, precise revenges. He thought of his queen's face tonight, the way her anger had curled inward around hurt. I won't move against her, he said. Not now, not unless she gives me no choice. I'm not asking you to, Sansa said. I'm asking you to let me protect you, to protect the North. If men like Varys are going to weigh you against her, I'd rather they do it with their eyes open, not chasing rumors. He closed his eyes briefly. The world had been simpler when his problems had been limited to cold, hunger, and the patience of men in black. But that world was gone, buried under snow and dragonfire. Do what you think you must, he said at last. But don't forget she saved us. Don't turn this into a knife in her back. Sansa's gaze softened. I won't, she said. I have no wish to see her burn. I just don't want to see us burned for her. Arya's dagger spun once, catching the light. We'll watch her, Arya said. We'll watch everyone. If she hurts you, if she hurts the pack. She smiled, and there was nothing of childhood in it. She'll learn what northern wolves can do. The next morning, Winterfell woke to another council. The war room had been hastily repaired after the siege. New torches burned where others had been ripped from their brackets to use as weapons. The long wooden table, carved in the shape of Westeros, bore fresh gouges and dark stains that no amount of scrubbing could fully erase. Around it, the living gathered once more to plan how they might best kill each other. Daenerys stood at the head of the table, shoulders straight, hair braided back in the fashion of a warrior, the silver strands woven with small metal rings. On the map before her, little carved dragons clustered in the north, their heads turned southward. Jon took his place to her right. Sansa stood near the opposite corner, hands resting lightly on the edge of the table, eyes cool. Arya lingered behind her shoulder, a shadow that could stab. Bran's chair had been rolled to a spot where he could see the map, though his attention seemed far away. Tyrion and Varys flanked Daenerys' other side, the hand's pin glinting at Tyrion's breast. Davos Seaworth stood near Jon, the smell of salt clinging to him even here in the heart of the North. Grey Worm's expression gave nothing away as he watched from beside his queen. We cannot linger, Daenerys said. Her voice carried easily in the room, brooking no argument at first hearing. Every day we spend here is another day Cersei Lannister uses to fortify her position. She has the Golden Company. She has Euron Greyjoy's fleet. She will not sit idle. And we cannot march half-starved men south to fight another war, Sansa replied. Our stores are low. Our people are exhausted. The long night took more from us than bodies. They need time to remember what it is to live without a sword in their hand. Time is the one thing we do not have, Daenerys said. She did not look at Sansa directly when she answered. Her gaze stayed on the map, as if the carved wood might yield a better truth than the woman across from her. Cersei will not wait politely until we are ready to unseat her. She will strike when she thinks us weakest. She thinks us weakest now, Tyrion put in. She will be counting on your reluctance to sacrifice what remains of your strength, your grace. That will make her bold. But Sansa is right about one thing: our men are tired. If we rush them south in this state, their morale will crack along the King's Road. Varys inclined his bald head. The people of King's Landing may already be restless, he said. Another war at their gates may tip them into revolt. or into clinging more tightly to the lion they know rather than the dragon they fear. Daenerys's mouth thinned. "I did not come here to debate whether we fight," she said. "Only when. And my answer remains the same. As soon as we are able." "Our horses need time to rest," Sansa said. "Our wounded need tending. At least give us a fortnight. Let our people breathe, your grace. Let them remember whom they are fighting for." "For themselves," Daenerys said. "For a better world than the one Cersei would give them. And for the North," Sansa added. "For Winterfell. For their families. Do not forget that either." Jon felt the air thicken between them like congealing blood. He could almost see the lines on the floor. Dragon on one side, wolf on the other, him standing with one foot on each. "We can do both," he said quickly. "Give them a little time. A week at least. Enough to mend armor, shoe horses, clear the worst of the dead from the fields. Then we march." Daenerys looked at him. Her gaze softened, but only slightly. "A week," she said. "No more." Sansa's eyes flicked to Jon, then back to Daenerys. "We will see what we can do," she said. It was not a yes, not entirely. "We should also speak of who marches," Tyrion said, seizing the chance to move the conversation to safer ground. "And who stays? The North cannot be left undefended, nor can the Wall, what remains of it." "The dead are gone," Grey Worm said. It was the first time he'd spoken. "We saw the Night King fall. His army crumbled with him. The dead are never gone in the North," Davos muttered, half under his breath. Jon wasn't sure whether anyone else heard. "We leave a garrison," Jon said. "Starks have always left men to guard the North when they ride south. That shouldn't change, no matter who leads the rest." Daenerys's attention lingered on him a heartbeat too long. He wondered if she heard what he wasn't saying. That Starks had once marched south and failed to come back at all. "Very well," she said. "You know your people best. Choose those who stay with your sister. The rest will march with me." "With us," Jon corrected gently. "We march together." Her mouth twitched, almost a smile. "With us," she amended. Sansa's knuckles whitened on the table edge. "And what of the North when all this is done?" she asked. "When Cersei is defeated and you sit the throne you want so badly?" Her gaze rested on Daenerys now, cool and direct. "Will you remember that we bled for you? That we beat back the dead while you still sailed in warm seas?" "I will remember who stood with me," Daenerys said. "And who did not." "That's not an answer," Sansa said. "It is the only one you will get today," Daenerys replied. Jon cut in before Sansa could push further. "We can't decide the shape of the world before we've won the war in front of us," he said. "We'll settle the rest when Cersei is gone." He felt Sansa's gaze like a hand on his cheek, weighing him, finding him wanting. Arya said nothing, but her eyes narrowed. Varys's expression remained as serene as ever, but Jon did not miss the way his fingers tapped once, twice, against the table edge. Tyrion's brow furrowed, thoughts moving behind his mismatched eyes. The meeting broke with nothing fully resolved, only pushed forward. Men filed out, some murmuring among themselves, others tight-lipped. Daenerys left with Grey Worm at her side and Miss Sand, hovering a few paces behind, her shoulders squared as if for battle. Jon lingered a moment, watching her go. "You chose her side," Sansa said quietly beside him. "I chose no one's side," he said. "Not yet. I chose to keep us from tearing each other's throats out in front of our own men." "That's a side," Arya said. "You just don't like naming it." They met as they had before the battle, on the walls with the wind as their only chaperone. Tyrion found Sansa already there, cloak drawn tight around her shoulders, hair pinned back in a simple, practical knot. She looked older than the girl he'd married in King's Landing, harder and more sure of the space she took up in the world. That girl had watched the capital from balconies, dreaming of songs. This woman watched her own home, weighing the banners that snapped in the cold air. "Lady of Winterfell," Tyrion said, stopping a respectful distance away. You look as if you're contemplating throwing someone from these walls. Should I be worried? That depends, Sansa replied. Are you planning to give me reason? He offered her a small smile. Not today, I hope. He took his place beside her, resting his elbows on the parapet to peer down into the courtyard. Men moved below them like ants, hauling wood, mending armor, tending to the battered horses. Above, Rhaegal wheeled once before settling on a distant tower, claws scraping stone. It's almost peaceful, Tyrion observed, if one squints and ignores the dragons. I've learned not to trust peace, Sansa said. It rarely lasts. He glanced sideways at her, sharp as ever, her breath misted in the air. You wanted to speak, she said. You've been looking at me all day like a man who's swallowed a bad secret. Not swallowed, Tyrion said, merely tasted. He rolled the stem of his cup between his fingers. You were in the Godswood, the night Jon went to speak with Bran and Samwell. She didn't bother to feign ignorance. You have long ears for a short man, she said. Comes with the height, he replied lightly. Makes one pay closer attention. She was silent for a moment. Below, someone shouted an order. The words were lost in the wind. A raven launched itself from a tower, beating wings carrying it into the darkening sky. What do you know? She asked. Only that something shifted that night, he said. Jon has been different since. More burdened, if that's possible. Daenerys, too. She looks at him as if he is both lifeline and noose. He paused. You don't like her. I don't know her, Sansa said. Not truly. I know what she's done. Some of it admirable, some of it terrifying. I know that she came here with dragons and foreign soldiers and expected us to kneel and be grateful. I know she looks at the North as a prize to be added to her hoard, not as a people who have suffered enough. And Jon? Tyrion asked. He is my family, she said simply. Whatever else he might be, I trust him. I do not trust what she might make of him, or what others might. Tyrion studied her profile. She had learned so much since the last time he'd stood with her on a wall. Back then he had thought himself clever and her a child. Now he suspected the balance had tipped. You were always good at seeing where the danger lay, he said, even if you could not always escape it. I learned that from men like Joffrey and Ramsay, she said. I would prefer not to learn more from their like. He weighed his next words carefully. If you know something that concerns the fate of the realm, he said, now would be a very good time to share it. She let her gaze drift across the courtyard, as if looking for an answer in the movement of men below. When she spoke, her voice was low. Jon is not who he thinks he is, she said. Who we thought he was. That is the vaguest possible way you could say that, Tyrion observed. I'm almost impressed. His parents were not Ned Stark and some nameless woman from his youth, Sansa continued, ignoring the jibe. They were Lyanna Stark and Rhaegar Targaryen. Tyrion felt his fingers tighten on the cup. The wind cut across the ramparts, suddenly sharper. That is a bold claim, he said. I assume you have more than rumor and wishful thinking. Bran has seen it, Sansa said. Samwell found the record in the Citadel. Rhaegar had his first marriage annulled. He married Lyanna. Their child was born in Dorne. Ned brought him home and called him his bastard to keep Robert from killing him. Tyrion's mind raced, shuffling old stories into new patterns. Rhaegar at Harrenhal, placing the crown of winter roses on Lyanna's lap. Robert's endless rage whenever her name was spoken. Ned Stark's stubborn silence whenever his bastard son was mentioned with too much curiosity. And this child, he said. What did they call him? Aegon Targaryen, Sansa said. Jon Snow. Both. The name struck him with almost physical force. Aegon. The conqueror's name. The prince's name. The name of a boy whose brains had been dashed out against a wall. The name of a man who had bent the knee to his queen and now found a crown in his hands whether he wanted it or not. You realize what you are saying, Tyrion murmured. If this is true, he is the rightful heir, not Daenerys. not by the laws of the realm. I know, Sansa said. Why do you think I lie awake at night? He drained his cup in one long swallow. And why are you telling me this? He asked. Do you want me to use it? To turn against her? No, Sansa said. I want you to understand what's at stake. You pledged yourself to her. You believe in her. I can see that. But you are not blind. You've seen what happens when a ruler begins to think the world owes them obedience because of their blood. Jon's blood puts him in her way whether he likes it or not. If she feels threatened, she has burned those who threatened her before. Tyrion finished quietly. Yes, Sansa said, and she will again if she believes it necessary. I am asking you, Tyrion, if it comes to choosing between her and my family, remember what I've told you. Remember who Jon is, not his blood, his choices. A muscle ticked in his jaw. He thought of Daenerys in Meereen, standing before a crowd of freed slaves with their broken chains raised high. He thought of her on the field outside Yunkai, face exult, tant as the gates burst open. He thought of her on the cliffs above Dragonstone, staring out at the sea that had carried her so far from the home she'd never known. He also thought of her on the road to King's Landing, the cold rage that had flashed in her eyes when she'd learned of Cersei's treachery, the way she had watched the flames devour her enemies, breath quickening in time with the fire. I do not want another mad king, Tyrion said, or queen. Then help us make sure we do not get one, Sansa replied. Varys wrote slowly. The scratch of his quill on parchment was a soft, steady sound, like a mouse gnawing somewhere in the walls. Candlelight pooled around him, leaving the edges of the small chamber in shadow. It was not one of the grand solar rooms the lords claimed, but a modest space near the rookery, conveniently close to the ravens. Tyrion watched him from the doorway, wine untouched. You always did look more dangerous with a quill than most men with swords, Tyrion observed. Varys did not look up. Words are cheaper than steel, he said mildly, and often cut more cleanly. He finished a line, blew gently on the wet ink, then set the quill aside. You're pacing. I am standing, Tyrion said. You are standing in such a way that suggests you would rather be pacing, Varys replied. Sit, my lord. You make the room feel smaller. Tyrion obliged, settling on a stool opposite the spider. Up close, he could see that Varys's usually smooth brow was faintly creased. How many letters? Tyrion asked, nodding toward the scrolls. Fewer than I would like, more than is safe, Varys said. I am considering my words. Treat them like wildfire, Tyrion advised. Too much in the wrong place and everything burns. An apt metaphor, Varys conceded. Tyrion took a slow breath. I spoke with Sansa Stark, he said. Varys's gaze sharpened. And she is concerned about our queen, Tyrion said. As are many in this castle, though few have her courage, or her reasons for distrust. And you, Varys asked, are you concerned, my friend? Tyrion thought of Daenerys' face when she had spoken of her birthright, of Jon's haunted and stubborn. I am conflicted, he said. She has done great good. She has also committed acts that make men whisper when they think she cannot hear. I thought the former outweighed the latter. I still hope it does. But Sansa has given me a new quantity to weigh. Jon Snow, Varys said. It was not a question. Aegon Targaryen, Tyrion corrected quietly. The name hung in the candlelight. For once, Varys's composure slipped. His eyes widened a fraction, his lips parting. Ah, he said. So it is true then. You knew? Tyrion asked. I suspected, Varys replied. Bran Stark has been watching people with those pale eyes of his. Samwell Tarly has been haunting the Ravenry with old books. Jon Snow has been carrying himself like a man who has misplaced his own name. One learns to recognize these shifts. He folded his hands on the table. But hearing it confirmed is another matter. Tyrion told him what Sansa had said. Lyanna, Rhaegar, the Tower of Joy, the annulment, the marriage. the baby smuggled north under a false name. Varys listened without interruption, only the slight tilt of his head betraying his interest. "So the realm has a king it did not know of," Varys said when he finished. "A true-born male heir, honest, brave, tempered by death and duty, and beloved in the north." His gaze flicked toward the ceiling, as if he could see through stone to the people sleeping above. "The gods do have a sense of timing." "She told you," Tyrion said. "Sansa, she knows what you are, why you do what you do." "Yes," Varys said. "She is many things, but she is not a fool. She knows that when rulers falter, someone must consider the realm as a whole." "Do not," Tyrion warned, "say the words for the good of the realm to me tonight. I have heard them used to justify too many atrocities." "They can justify mercy as well," Varys said, "if one listens closely." Tyrion's wine went untouched. "I am sworn to Daenerys," he said. "I meant it when I pledged my service. She freed slaves where others fattened themselves on their backs. She shattered chains. I believed in her. I still want to." "As do I," Varys said. "I served her father until I could not. I have watched her since she was a girl sold in a city across the sea. I have seen her grow into a woman of strength and, yes, mercy." He paused. "But I have also seen the fire in her. The way she looks at those who defy her. The way she reacts to loss." "Jorah Mormont's death hit her hard," Tyrion said. "So did the losses in the long night. It is no wonder she is unsteady." "It is in unstable moments that rulers show their true nature," Varys murmured. "Her grief may pass. Her sense of entitlement will not." "You speak as if you've already chosen," Tyrion said. "Between Jon and Daenerys." "I speak as a man who has seen too many cities burn because no one had the courage to say enough," Varys replied. "Aegon Targaryen is the lawful heir. More importantly, he is a man proven to put others before himself. You have seen it. He died for his men. He bent the knee to save the living. He rode into the dark when others would have stayed behind stone walls." "He could still be corrupted," Tyrion said. "Power changes people." "Perhaps," Varys agreed, "but we have at least some evidence of his character. With Daenerys, the evidence grows mixed." "You are talking treason," Tyrion said quietly. "I am talking about the future of millions," Varys replied. "If that is treason, then make the most of it." Tyrion stared at the candle flame, watching it tremble as a draft slipped under the door. "I will not move against her," he said. "Not yet. Not while Cersei still sits on that throne. Not while there is any chance she can be guided toward mercy." "Not yet," Varys echoed. "But you feel it too, don't you? The ground shifting under us. The way she looks at him now." Tyrion said nothing. "I will do what I must for the realm," Varys said gently. "If that means backing Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, then I will. I would prefer not to stand alone when that day comes." Tyrion closed his eyes briefly. He saw King's Landing in his mind's eye, its alleys and septs and taverns, its children darting between carts, its beggars warming their hands over thin fires. "I pray," he said, "that we are wrong about her, that we never have to chew." "See, prayer is a luxury," Varys said. "Preparation is not." Rhaegal's breath gusted hot against Jon's face, carrying the scent of ash and something deeper, old mineral, like stone that had drunk too much heat. The dragon's head loomed above him, eyes the yellow-green of moss over gold. Scars from the battle marred his scales, a fresh, jagged line along his flank where white claws had raked him. He had healed faster than any horse might, but not without pain. Jon lifted his hand slowly, as he had done once before on the cliffs of Dragonstone. Rhaegal snorted, hot air ruffling Jon's hair, and then lowered his head just enough to meet the touch. The scales were smoother than they looked, not quite warm, not quite cold. Jon felt the rumble in the dragon's skull, a sound that sat somewhere between purr and growl. "You remember me," he murmured. Rhaegal's pupil narrowed, then widened. as if in answer. A few men lingered near the edge of the pens, ostensibly tending to equipment or checking the integrity of the chains. Their eyes kept straying back, wide and wary. Whispers had already started in the yard. The king in the north who rode a dragon. The bastard who flew. Ghost sat just outside the circle of frost scorched into the snow by dragonfire. Hackles not raised but posture alert. The dire wolf watched the dragon the way he watched any large beast. Wariness laced with curiosity, measuring the threat. Mad, came a familiar voice behind Jon. Mad as any Targaryen riding that thing. Jon smiled faintly and glanced back. Davos Seaworth stood with his arms folded, breath pluming, the scarred fingers of one hand drumming silently on his sleeve. "I thought you said you were done with kings and their madness," Jon said. "I did," Davos replied. "Yet here I am, following another one who doesn't think he's a king. Might be I'm the mad one." "I'm not a king," Jon said. The words felt automatic now, a reflex. "You keep saying that," Davos said. "The more you say it, the less it sounds true." Jon turned fully, hand falling from Rhaegal's snout. The dragon huffed and shifted, but did not move away. "You've heard," Jon said. Davos's mouth twisted. "Hard not to hear whispers when they hiss in every corner," he said. "I don't know all the details. Don't need them. Enough to know you've got dragon blood in you, and that some folk think that matters more than all the rest you've done." "It doesn't," Jon said, sharper than he meant to. "I am who I've always been. This doesn't change that." "Doesn't change it for you," Davos agreed. "But for them." He jerked his chin toward the men hanging back. "Different story. They'll look at you up there on that beast and see something else. Something larger than a man." He paused. "People are fools for symbols. Always have been." "I won't let them use me against her," Jon said. "I told Daenerys as much." "And did she believe you?" Davos asked. Jon remembered the way her eyes had cut through him, flaring with anger, dimming with doubt. "I don't know," he admitted. Rhaegal shifted again, wings rustling. His tail swept a long arc through the snow, sending a spray of frost into the air. "When we rode north," Jon said, "it felt right, like the dragon knew me, like we were meant for it." Davos said, "and that's what frightens me." Jon frowned. Davos stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've seen enough would-be kings to last me 2 lifetimes, he said. "Boy kings, mad kings, kings who liked the sound of their own names more than the sound of their people eating with full bellies." He studied Jon's face. "You're not like them, not yet, might never be. You're stubborn in the right ways, and not so fond of power that you'll burn the world to get more. That's good. That's rare." "It's not me you should be saying this to," Jon said. "It's her." "I've said what I can to her," Davos replied. "She hears some, not all." He nodded toward Rhaegal. "But you need to understand what you look like from the outside now. Man of the North, slayer of the dead, rider of dragons, heir of Rhaegar." He let out a low whistle. "That's a lot of weight for one back." "I didn't ask for it," Jon said. "Doesn't matter," Davos said. "The world rarely asks if we want what it gives us. It just drops it in our lap and walks away whistling." Rhaegal lowered himself, front legs folding. Jon felt, as much as heard, the invitation in the dragon's movement. The last time he had climbed onto that scaled back, he had done it half out of stubbornness, half out of necessity. Now it felt different, not easier, but less terrifying. "Go on then," Davos said quietly. "They're watching. Might as well give them something worth talking about." Jon hesitated, then stepped forward and swung himself up, fingers finding purchase in the ridged spine. Rhaegal shifted, adjusting to the weight. The world tilted as the dragon crouched, muscles coiling. When he leapt, the ground fell away in a rush of wind and snow. For a moment, Jon's stomach lurched. Then they were climbing, Winterfell's towers dropping beneath them, the walls shrinking. The air was blades on his cheeks. His cloak snapped like a banner. He felt Rhaegal's power in every beat of those massive wings, the way each stroke pushed them higher into the sky. Below, men pointed. Some raised fists and shouted. Others crossed themselves or ducked their heads, as if uncertain whether to cheer or hide. From this height, the world seemed almost simple. Fields spread out, blanketed in white. The ruined line of the wall etched the far horizon. The forest clustered dark and dense. Smoke from the smithies rose in thin, fragile threads. Jon guided Rhaegal in a shallow arc, circling once above the castle. For an instant, as the dragon banked and the sun flashed off his scales, he saw his own reflection in the green curve of an eye. Small, dark, clinging to the back of something that should not exist. He felt distantly the echo of Daenerys' first flights, the exultation she must have known, the feeling that the world was suddenly bigger and smaller all at once. It was easy up here to think of crowns and kingdoms as tiny things. When he landed, snow billowed in a white cloud around Rhaegal's talons. Men scattered, cursing, then stared again. Davos approached, squinting up at him. "Well?" he called. "Feel like a king now?" Jon slid down, boots hitting the churned snow with a thud. "No," he said honestly. "Just higher." Davos snorted. "Let's hope your head doesn't stay that way," he said. "Remember, lad, the higher they put you, the further there is to fall." By evening, the Godswood had reclaimed its quiet. Jon stood before the heart tree again, snow crunching under his boots. Ghost pressed against his leg, solid and silent. The day's noise, the clatter of armor, the murmur of plans, the distant roar of dragon wings, seemed far away here, muffled by bark and branch. The carved face in the weirwood watched him with its bleeding eyes. Once, when he had been younger, he had tried to imagine what the old gods saw when they looked at him. A bastard boy trying not to be angry, a man in black trying not to be afraid, a Lord Commander trying not to be overwhelmed. What did they see now? A Targaryen in wolf's clothing? A prince running from a crown? "You're quiet," Arya said behind him. He turned. She and Sansa stood at the edge of the clearing, cloaks drawn tight. Sansa's hair caught the last light of the setting sun, copper sparking against snow. Arya looked comfortable in the half-dark, as if she belonged to the shadows as much as the light. "I was thinking," Jon said. "You've been doing too much of that lately," Arya observed. Sansa stepped closer, her breath misting. "We saw you," she said, "on the dragon. That hard to miss?" Jon asked wryly. "Just a bit," Arya said. "You looked small." "Thank you," he muttered. She shrugged. "Everything looks small from high enough. Even castles. Even kings." Sansa's gaze searched his face. "They're already talking," she said. "The men who saw, the ones who didn't. You in the sky, the way Rhaegal took to you. It will spread." "I know," Jon said. "Daenerys saw too," Sansa said. "I watched her watching you. She didn't look pleased." "She's afraid," Jon said. "I can't blame her. I've given her reason." "We all have reasons to be afraid," Sansa replied. "It's what we do with them that matters." He sighed, breath clouding the air. "Tomorrow we start preparing to march," he said. "A week, that's all we've got. Then we go south to face Cersei. And Daenerys," Arya added. "With you in the middle." "I'll stand with her," Jon said. He needed to hear it aloud as much as they did. "As long as I can. As long as she gives me reason to believe she wants what's best for the people, not just for her." "And if she doesn't?" Sansa asked. He looked back at the heart tree. The red leaves stirred in a wind he could not feel. "Then I'll do what I've always done," he said quietly. "I'll protect the people I can, the ones who can't protect themselves, even if it means standing where I'd rather not." "That's a very pretty way of saying you'll throw yourself in front of the fire again," Arya said dryly. "It's what he does," Sansa said. There was no mockery in it, only weary fondness. "It's what father did. It's why we loved him. It's why it killed him." Jon flinched. Sansa reached out and, for the first time in what felt like a long time, placed her gloved hand on his arm. "We're not children anymore, Jon," she said. "We know what the world is. We know what men and women will do for power. You aren't the only one who has to stand between them and those they would hurt. You have us, the pack." Arya nodded. "If you fall, we bite. Remember that." Ghost huffed softly, as if in agreement. He looked from one to the other. Sansa's careful strength, Arya's lethal calm, and felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the furs he wore. "I don't want to be the thing they fight over," he admitted. "The crown, the symbol, the bloodline. I just want to be Jon." "Then be Jon," Arya said. "Let them argue over names. You know who you are. So do we." "Do you?" he asked. "Truly?" Sansa's grip tightened. "You're the boy who gave me your cloak when I spilled food on mine," she said. "The one who stood between me and Joffrey when you could. The man who died for his men and came back still wanting to do right. You're a Stark, whatever the name in some book says. You're also a Targaryen, whether we like it or not. Both can be true." "It's a lot," he said. "It is," she agreed. "But you're not carrying it alone anymore." He looked up. Through the bare branches, a slice of darkening sky showed, tinged with the last red of sunset. For a moment, just before the light died, a shape crossed it. A dragon gliding lazy circles, silhouetted against the fading glow. Fire above, ice below, and him somewhere in between. "We leave soon," he said. "We might not come back. We've been might not coming back since the day Father lost his head," Arya said. "Hasn't stopped us yet." Sansa's mouth curved. "We will come back," she said. "One way or another. Winterfell is ours. The North is ours. Whatever throne they squabble over down south, this will always be our home." Jon believed her, or wanted to. He turned back to the heart tree and, for the first time since Bran had spoken in its shadow, laid his palm flat against the carved bark. "Whoever I am," he murmured, not sure whether he was speaking to the old gods, to his parents, or to himself. "Whatever I have to do, let me not lose them. Let me not burn what I mean to save." The tree, as ever, did not answer. But the wind shifted, and the sound of it through the branches was not unlike a sigh. Behind him, Sansa and Arya waited. Beside him, Ghost sat vigilant. Above, the dragon turned in the sky. In the morning, they would begin the march that would carry them all toward fire and ruin, toward crowns and corpses, toward a city that had already tasted one mad ruler's wrath. In the south, a queen in red and gold sharpened her knives. In the camp, another queen in black and silver steeled her heart. Between them stood Jon Snow, Aegon Targaryen, caught between wolf and dragon, between the life he had lived and the birthright he had never asked for. For tonight, though, as the first stars flickered into being and Winterfell settled into uneasy sleep, he stood in the fold of his family's home, wrapped in the only kind of loyalty that did not care what blood ran in his veins. Tomorrow, the world would ask him to choose.